Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Tonight's session, Cary Cleborad will present on optical structures. He just asked it in the room, have you ever heard of my company? And a few of us hadn't, but then we did hear of a number of the companies that he owns, or that Optical Structures owns. So we'll get into that in a second. First, I do want to show off our image of the week, which goes to, sorry about that window. Man, I know that's annoying. Jeff Weiss for this Sunflower Galaxy. As always, you can jump onto our website, check it out, or jump on there and submit your own images. To submit your own images, hover there, Image of the Week submission, and then at the bottom, submit it here. Also, feel free to check out any of the submissions or any of the past Image of the Weeks and comment or whatever you would like. Let's see here. That, I believe, is all I have got. So once I get my screen back, I am going to hand it over to Cary. Cary, the screen is yours now.
All right. So I guess I'll just dive in here with this little presentation. I'm going to give kind of overview of how optical structures got started and what we've done in the past few years and where I think we're going to go. So let me share out this. There we go. And then I'll start this presentation here. So can we see that okay?
We see it fine. Thank you.
All right. So I'm actually going to back up to kind of go through my history a little bit. And it really starts with a company called SCITECH and a fellow named Dr. James Ray, who's PhD astronomer who's been in astronomy for 50 years. So let's go like this. So a little bit about Dr. Ray. He did his PhD thesis on the computation of orbits from meteors. And actually that book has been recently used to develop two-station automated meteor orbit calculation, which is interesting. So he went on and was one of the principal investigators on the S19 experiment, which was the first UV space spectra. It started out in the Mercury program. I don't know if you see the picture in the upper right here with the astronaut running the instrument. That's the actual instrument that they built. They started working in the Mercury program, and then Apollo, and then they had the fire in Apollo, and it finally got bumped back to Skylab and flew on Skylab. And so they got the first ultraviolet spectra in space. And then towards the end of his institutional career, he did the Color Atlas of Galaxies in 1988. It was the first color survey of galaxies. It's an interesting book to pick up if you guys want to look at that. So he went on and formed a company called SCITECH in 1990. And he did this solar flare telescope in the upper right-hand corner. Nikon built one, he built one. And then went on to do the Orbital Debris Telescope, which was a dark project to monitor geostationary satellites, but it was run under the guise of NASA in the Orbital Debris Monitoring Station. So this is kind of before me, but then I came into the company and we developed the big fork mount, did some scanning LiDAR. We did kind of a hodgepodge of telescope, telescopy stuff, if you will. And we even caught the attention of Mike Brown at Mount Palomar, and we built one of these big fork mounts for Mike, and it's up on Mount Palomar. So I think it was the first new telescope on Mount Palomar in like 30 years. And then kind of the crowning glory of SCITECH was this 0.8 meter telescope that we spent a lot of effort. This was 1998 when we were building this, so the encoder technology barely existed. ACP was brand new. We could barely pull this off. So 0.8 meter robotic telescope. By the time we pulled everything together and got this working, it's completely scripted. All aspects of the observatory, hands off. The owner would actually go away. He'd fly to Germany for weeks, and this thing would continue to do the automated supernova search all the way through the data reduction pipeline, which the pipeline was provided by, oh, I'm losing it, the Lick Observatory. It was a joint effort. So this telescope, quite amazing. It points all sky plus or minus 0.84 arc seconds. It basically got the star in the same pixel on the CC detector wherever you pointed it. So that was quite an accomplishment for 1998. We built it with complete in-var thermal stabilization. So there's no temperature shift or focus versus temperature change. And then, you know, we pulled off 1,000 image acquisitions in the early 90s or early 2000s. So then this is where I kind of start taking over. You know, we actually wound down SCITECH in 2004. Dr. Ray basically retired, and I went to this messy place in my basement. I borrowed $1,500 and bought a semiconductor lapper. Can you guys, am I still on? I'm not getting any feedback. Are you guys there?
We can still see you.
Okay, good. I'm just babbling, and so borrowed $1,500 and bought a lapping machine, and I started a company called WODEN Optics in my basement. And there's a little pano I took of my messy little shop, but I started making mirrors. And then in 2006, I moved over to Amalgam Way here in Rancho Cordova into this building. It was actually looking like a business. Got some more machinery, got some partners, and continued to grow the company. So in 2006, right as we moved, I had been nursing a bid for a LiDAR contract, and we ended up winning it. So we won a $250,000 LiDAR contract. The day after it was awarded, I walked into the adjoining facility and asked the guy to move out by the end of the week, and if he did, I'd give him $5,000, and he did. So we founded Optical Structures, expanded the facility, and put in some CNC machine shop so we could execute on the LiDAR. We had this, the WODEN Optics company got renamed to Optic Wave Labs, which hopefully some of you are familiar with. That's my ugly mug holding a gold mirror. We also expanded the Optic Labs and installed a coating chamber. And right in the end of 2006, that's when we launched the Farpoint brand. So we worked like crazy for a number of years between then and now, and then we found ourselves in the position of being able to make some acquisitions. So we acquired the LUMICON brand in November of 2016, struck a deal for JMI. Jim Burr wanted to retire. We pulled that together in June. We're actually still transferring the company. And then we acquired ASTRODON Filter Company from Don Goldman in January 2018. So this has been a lot of work and a little bit of status of how we're doing with things. LUMICON, we're doing a lot of restocking of the product line, bringing the product line up to modern imaging kind of standards, redoing the guiders to support CCDs rather than film. So we're adding more modern product on the design. So we're also, I've been spending the past year redesigning and improving the filter line. A lot of the LUMICON standard filters, like the O3 visual filters, the UHC visual filter, the Deep Sky, those designs have been kind of static for a long time. And I've been working with our thin film coder on refreshing the specs. We've done considerable improvement to the designs and the execution of the filters. So those are starting to be released. Matter of fact, next week, I think our new O3 filter comes out. And we've achieved 99.8% transmission in the O3 line for a visual filter, which is pretty amazing. Same thing with JMI. We've been, moving the company from Denver to Sacramento. Actually, at the end of this month, I've got one more trip to drive out there and bring the last of the product line back. We're modernizing the production, going to CNC fabrication. JMI had a small metal and machine shop, and they made everything by hand, one at a time. So we're getting that into, all the designs are coming into SolidWorks and going out to laser cutting and CNC press brake forming, and we're making things in larger batches so we can make these things fast enough for the market. Again, we're refreshing the products, adding some microcontroller control to some of the focusing devices. And then we acquired ASTRODON. So where we are with ASTRODON, what we found when we took over the company, that the demand is crazy for imaging filters, especially ASTRODON. Don had been kind of ready to be retired and had been restricting the growth of the company. And so we took it on, and it's like everyone wants this stuff. So we're also getting large observatory attention. We've got ASTRODON filters in Keck and Subaru and Hale. We've got South African Astrophysical Observatory buying a batch of photometric filters right now. So the filter line is actually really solid and really in demand from amateurs on up to observatories. Unfortunately, with the demand comes weight. So currently we're seeing lead times up to 2 months for delivery sometimes for customers. However, we're working on increasing production to meet that demand. Just last week, I had a meeting with our thin film coder to work out details of how to ramp up production. So we've implemented some plans, and hopefully the lead time for filters will shrink to about a week in the next month, if that makes sense. And again, our goal is to meet all the demand by the end of this summer, so nobody has to wait for their filters. So to do all that, we had to move, which added to the complexity. So the left side, you see that's our old little facility. We're 4,000 square feet. And we moved around the corner half mile away to a 15,000 foot section of a building. And I'm actually chomping at the bit to get the rest of the building. So in our new facility, we have 8,000 square feet of warehouse and assembly area, 2,000 square feet of CNC machine shop, 2,000 square feet of optical fab and a coating lab. And then we have another area we're building out. This will be super important for our future activities. The 2,000 square foot optical test and filter inspection lab. So, and then we have an electronics lab upstairs. And this pretty machine here, this is brand new mill that we get delivered on July 23rd. So with all the increased activity, our old machines aren't cutting it, so I'm starting to replace them with some new spacey, pretty looking things. I don't know if anyone has any questions at this point.
There are a few questions. First, will the LUMICON photo filter line merge with ASTRODON, or will they stay separate? Any name changes? That'd be the first question, and I'm going to ask the second question.
Right. So the brands deserve being carried forward on their own. We're not going to change names. We're not going to abandon brands. These are things that everyone knows and loves, and we want to keep them around. Before I acquired ASTRODON, I was toying with the idea of having LUMICON come out with imaging line filters. However, the ASTRODON filter kind of eliminates the need for that. So I don't think there's going to be any merger. The LUMICON filter line is primarily visual. The one thing that you might consider photographic would be the deep sky filter, but that was really targeted at film. It does have some application in the one-shot color cameras, but I think it'll stay how it is. So I'm just working on improving the designs.
And I guess my question is, you're speeding up the production of ASTRODON, will the actual filters change in any way, or are you continuing to make them the same way, just trying to speed up the production of the same thing?
It's coordinating a management issue. So the ASTRODON filters are made in a facility that has capacity beyond anyone's dreams. And the way our production agreements work is we get to fit in the gaps. We're the fill-in work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's how we maintain pricing.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to increase production, I have to give them increased projections so they can find the holes for us. So there's not a chance of anything being affected. That's
Okay.
what I'm getting.
Okay.
The facility we use has 1.2 million square feet of thin film production, if you can imagine that. They have customers that buy $25 million worth of filters in a single order. So, so rest assured. It's good.
Awesome. The question, I guess, let me rephrase the question. Any substantive changes to the LUMICON devices? You said you're going to start focusing on, I guess, DSL, CCDs or
yeah, more in
DSL.
Well, and so, it's not a major change, but the thing that I'm focusing on is the off-axis guider. It was really set up for film with an SLR and an eyepiece. So I'm tweaking some of the adapters and how things connect to be more suitable for a CCD camera with a little CCD off-axis guider. I've got the first prototypes together and they work very well. And I'm going to target specific cameras with these things, with packages. For instance, the ZWO. I've got, so the prototype is working with an one-shot color ZWO. I think it's the ASI 071 MC, the Pro. And I'm using a little 174 camera. So I'm getting a whole package together so the customer can say, I just buy that and plug it all together. Mm-hmm. And then I'll focus on other, model combinations. So it's not like we're throwing anything out and starting over. It's just kind of tweaking things to get us in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm. One question, with your expansion, do you expect an increase in an increase or a possible decrease in the cost of the ASTRODON filters? Everyone's fearing an increase and begging for a decrease, but
right, the decrease is not likely to happen, and increases are slow. We're not increasing anything to make up for all the cash we've bled in this process. So I'm not going to stick the customer that way. What will inevitably take hold is rate increases from our vendor, which have been being absorbed for the past several years. But we're going to have to start tracking those rate increases. But they're about 3 to 4% a year is how they publish their increases. So we could probably expect the retail price to track along that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you're caught up on questions.
Okay. So let's see, we did all this.
Cary, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I follow you on your Instagram account.
Yeah.
And I saw some pictures that look like a dome.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
So, we've done all this consolidation of industry, and it's been my goal since I started this company to start moving in the direction I'm going to talk about now. It's just taken a long time due to growth and we had a recession, and I had some bad partner issues, and I feel like I'm finally getting my act together, and put it that way. So basically, we're gonna track along, the imaging product line. This is where astronomy as a hobby has largely gone in the past 5 to 10 years. And so to help support that, domes and optical tube assemblies, and I've got a lot of ideas for integrated peripherals like filter wheels and focusers and rotators. And of course, I'd like to get back to my large telescope stuff. So the dome product, I'm going to give a little history and where I came from on this and our methodology of where we're going. When we put the 32-inch telescope in, that was put into an ash dome that had an off-the-shelf automation from another vendor. And it was, so this is 1999 now, very early in the automated game. And all they did was hook a microcontroller up and to the switches that ran the AC motor, and put an encoder on it and let it rip. And with 1,000 moves a night, we wore the dome out in 4 weeks. We literally shredded the drive track, and it was a disaster. So we came back in and retrofitted the retrofit, put a stepper motor on it, went through accelerated motion, put additional support rollers in the ash dome. And with that concept, it's worked flawlessly for 18 years now. So after we went through that, we thought, well, why don't we design a dome kind of based on the lessons we learned with how high use motion should work. A lot of support rollers, accelerated motion. We redesigned the drive gear system to an involute roller gear. And that's what this little prototype picture is here. It looks like a silo. It actually has silo parts in it. And it worked extremely well. I could get that dome, that's a 10-foot diameter dome, I could get it to turn at 30 RPM if I wanted to, which is quite frightening. So it worked well, but with the Gore concept, it was actually hard to manufacture and kind of expensive. So, and that was right at the time that we were winding down SCITECH, so it never went anywhere. It was kind of just an exploratory lesson. But then we thought, okay, let's revamp this whole concept. And unfortunately, I don't have a pretty looking model. This is kind of a partway skeletal view of what we're doing. But we're taking all the lessons of motion and motion control and support from the prior domes, and getting into a design that's goreless and easy to manufacture, biparting shutter. And so you kind of see some of this here. It's an octagonal dome, biparting shutter, and it's going to use all the support and motion that we learned way back when. Let's say 10-foot diameter, all metal, and everything is CNC fabricated. So there's really no artwork, there's no welding in it. These things are going to go together quickly and precisely. Laser cut components, and then the structural elements are actually milled on the CNC mills. The connectors and the structural members themselves are cut to length and drilled and tapped. We actually cut a hole in one of our mills, which was very painful, just to make this dome. So high speed, let's see, I think we're going to see 20 degrees a second rotation on this dome. So it'll get there as fast as the telescope. And it's also going to be very precise. That's something we discovered with the early automations, is they kind of cruise to a stop, and also with the cheaper domes, that they may not put the slot exactly where you want. So with the drive system we've developed here and the way the encoding is going to work, we'll have about 1/100 of an inch resolution at the dome slot. So any questions about this? No?
No questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. No new questions.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I have myself muted so you don't hear my dog barking.
No, it's okay. It's okay. And then of course it's got to be automation ready, right? So we'll have an ASCOM driver and a SCITECH plugin. So actually the first one that we're delivering for the customer this fall, we're going to do a SCITECH plugin for Mac for him because he's a Mac guy. So once that's launched, then we go back to, you know, I hinted with the optical lab, is we're building a fairly large lab for fabrication, and right adjoining to it is another 2,000 square feet of test area that we're putting optical tables in and building dedicated test setups and interferometers to make the optical tube assemblies. So it'd be a rich accretion with an APO field corrector. And this is actually the look at it says WODEN optics on the spot plot. I put this design together like 13 years ago, thinking about today, where we can see the ring around the dot. The ring is the diffraction limit. So of course we can't make our stars smaller than the diffraction limit, but then the geometric focus is all these little points inside there. So you can see we're landing inside the diffraction limit. And as we traverse across the graph, this is how far off axis we get. And you can see right here, things are still well contained. We've got an image circle of 80 millimeter diameter. And then they start to spill a little bit here. We're at 90 millimeter diameter. So this will support the largest chips we have, I think, available to the amateur community. So what we're going to initially focus on are 400, 500, 600 millimeter aperture telescopes. So what is that? That's 16, 20, and 24 inch imaging type telescopes. Of course, I talked about that. And part of this design, we brought the focus mechanism out of the 32 inch that we designed, and we're bringing it down into these smaller telescopes, which is super important. We've got kind of a proprietary design that Dr. Ray actually designed. It's pretty much black magic, that gives us sub-micron positioning control with no sloppiness and no deflecture. It's actually it's a piece of artwork, and I'm just happy to bring this into the size class here. So it's going to really going to help with the focusing issues. Again, slop free. Let's see, kind of a little preview of the top end there with all the magic in there. And then one thing I've been itching to do too with an imaging telescope is integrate the components, the filter wheel, the off-axis guider, the rotator. One thing that I see is a weak point in setting up an imaging system is that the customer has to divine and struggle and make happen all the connections between the different devices they buy. So they have to figure out how to get the filter wheel to connect to the telescope securely, you know, the camera to the filter wheel, the guider, you know, and how do you get the adapters and then make sure they're not wiggly and sloppy. And every connection you have a potential for slop and flex. So the concept that I have had for a long time is to start pulling these things together where the housings are actually common. You know, the guide port should be part of the filter wheel, and the rotator should be built into the filter wheel. So at that point, if we integrate all this into the telescope, the customer has to buy filters and a camera. And of course, we can supply the filters, right? Everything ASCOM, of course. The plan is to embed microcontrollers to run all this stuff. And so if all the peripherals are, if you will, are part of the telescope and integrated, then we have one cable, one connection, one driver to the telescope. So that reduces the hassle at the mount, basically. Optics will be produced in-house, and then pretty much everything will be fabricated by us. And then future is maybe we'll get to some of these large telescopes again. So I think that's all I really have to. Oh yeah. Oh okay. Yeah. On the large telescopes, if anyone is interested, this big fork mount in the upper right-hand corner, I still have parts to produce 4 of these. If someone is hunting for a big project. And then of course the yoke mount, like the 0.8 meter, it scales up to 2 meter real easy. So if someone's got big dreams, we can accommodate that. So I think that's it. I don't know if that was interesting.
Yes, very, very. One person's asking, will the observatory work on the sky? They're saying, will it work on a software bisque mighty mount? I'm guessing, will it work with the sky?
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
Matter of fact, the first customer has a mighty, going to run it with the sky on a Mac. So out of the box, it will be working that way.
And someone's asking whether you have a credit plan.
You know, I'm not quite big enough to do that yet, but I'm sure I could work with financing companies. We could arrange that.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's it's nice to see that you're actually doing stuff within the astronomy field, because a lot of the people want to retire, just as you said, and it's a shame that when people in this business tend to retire, in this hobby tend to retire, they take all that knowledge with them.
Right.
So it's nice to see their product on, particularly ASTRODON, because we're all massive fans of ASTRODON filters. So, I mean, basically every one of us that has bought one has become a giant proponent of them, basically after our first outing. So,
and there's very good reasons why those filters are so good. Yeah, it has to do with the technology that makes them. It's all proprietary from our vendor. So,
well, the difference was, it's one of those things where it's like, I know everyone said the difference is pretty significant, but until you actually see the difference, particularly on a night where like the moon's out and you're shooting H alpha,
right?
It's a pretty big difference. So.
Cary, Don is still with you, right?
Don has a consulting contract as part of the sale agreement. So yeah, we have near daily communication with him. We get a lot of these observatory requests that come in. We do custom filters, so he helps develop the specs and interacts on those as well. So yeah, Don, you know, Don likes to play astronomy, and he's probably going to do that for another 10 years at least. I mean, he's not that old. So he'll be around. He'll be around for sure.
Hopefully he gets to have fun in his retirement. Right?
Yeah, you know, he's been traveling like crazy lately.
Yep. Anyone else out there have any questions? I see a number of people are on, so please ask your questions now. I'm sorry. The same person that asked about whether it will work with a mighty mount says he's asking because from the manufacturer, that model is not supported for a dome. And I'm not quite sure what they're saying there.
Well, but it's for SCITECH, and we'll be making. There's a plug-in. I forgot what they particularly call it, but there's a way to make a plug-in that interfaces with the SCITECH. Actually, talked to I think Steve at BISC at MEEF about it, and it's going to happen. for sure. We
Gotcha.
can't deliver the first one without this working. So.
Yeah, it's called the X2 plugin.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I can't keep it all in my head.
Awesome. Could you elaborate on the LUMICON filter for the OSC camera?
The OSC.
One-shot color.
One-shot color.
Yeah.
Well, so that would be what's considered the deep sky filter. Or it's a broadband light pollution filter. So it's going to allow some of the continuum light through. It lets the O3 and the H beta bands through and the H alpha. So I mean, it's going to give you not a perfect look, but it is your best bet for suppressing light with the one-shot color. Now, I do have this idea, and I've been exploring with one of my designers about a one-shot color narrowband filter. We've determined it's theoretically possible to construct it. So then we would have H alpha, O3, and S2, like 3 nanometer band passes at those regions, all in one filter that you could stick over a one-shot color camera and essentially get narrowband imaging with your one-shot. So that might be next year, but that would be kind of cool, I think.
That'd be interesting. We had discussed something like that on the channel before. And we were wondering what it would be like to use a filter like that in monochrome cameras to get something of a luminance for narrowband imaging.
Oh.
We had tossed out a few ideas for it. The concern about using it with an OSC color is then you're restrained to, well, I shouldn't say that. You might be restrained to the color channels that those narrowband filters lie within, or restricted to them. But then I guess you could split the filter, split the channels out. No, you wouldn't be able to do that, right? Because
Nope.
2 channels are in red.
One
right?
shot, yeah.
There's some spillover, but yeah. But
It'd be about a $5,000 test for me to find out how good it is.
Right.
But
yeah.
I'm game to do it. I think it might be interesting.
Yeah, the application.
It would be interesting to use that filter as an L channel, as a luminescence filter on a monochrome. That's
right.
Really.
So that's kind of cool to hear that feedback, because then it gives it more value. So I like that idea.
Well, I'll tell you, even just as a surveying camera, a surveying filter, right? For surveying for like planetary nebula. Because I know they say if you want to survey and you want to find objects that haven't been seen before, do O3 really, really narrow and look for planetary nebula. But there's a lot of nothing out there in that O3 channel.
Of course.
So planetary nebula, yeah. Because I know they say if you want to, I gotta mute you, Molly. I'm sorry about that. I was hearing some feedback on your microphone, but I'll get to you in a sec. Let's see. I'm just reading up on the other question. Someone's asking if you need a smart soon to graduate PhD student who understands color perception, statistics, and coding in R. He also loves astrophotography and apologizes for being so bold. So I think you've got a job applicant in the chat here. Yeah. The OPT is selling something called the triad filter, which is expensive, but it does.
I took a look at that. It isn't that. It's essentially the LUMICON deep sky filter. It's just they're calling it tri-band because it passes H beta, O3, and H alpha. It's not narrowband though. I don't think.
Yeah. All right, so we went a little bit under on time tonight, but I don't see any new questions coming in. So if we don't have anything further, what I'm going to do is I'll call it a night. But Cary, again, I do want to thank you for coming. I don't know if anyone else in the room had any further questions. You guys have last shot in the chat to ask your questions. Otherwise, what I do want to say is next week we have Molly Wakeling on to give us a newbie's perspective on astrophotography. And the following week, Gaston Bodat will be on to present on auto guiding again, optimizing your auto guiding setup, or something of the sort. I forget his exact topic, but as always, I'm sure from him it'll be interesting. Don't see any new questions coming in. So Cary, one more time, thank you very much. Thanks all you guys for watching. Check us out on our website, subscribe to us on YouTube, whatever it takes. But thanks again. Good night.
Thanks for having me.